To see the fully uncut version of this video, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons.
What's that like to live deliciously? Chaos reigns.
Please don't scream.
Nah, Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
What's happening? My name is Jonjo Lyons, and today I'm here to present to you my review of The Orphan Killer. Written and directed by Matt Farnsworth, The Orphan Killer stars all of these. A boy witnesses his parents' murder and is sent to an orphanage where his sister is adopted and he is left behind being abused by using a mask. Years later, he returns to her life still masked, wanting to teach her a lesson. How you doing, my beautiful bags of flesh, muscle and bone ripe for the slaughter? It's that time again. Time to get our hands soaking wet with the blood of the innocent and have a little fun along the way. This week, we're going to be taking a look at a pretty nasty slasher that over the years somehow passed me by. One that, while low budget, manages to be a good time. A super gory, if flawed, good time. The Orphan Killer is yet another attempt to create a brand new slasher movie icon, something we saw done successfully with Art the Clown and unsuccessfully with everyone else. There was a sequel to this movie made that I'd love to track down, and also talks of a reboot as recently as 2022, but for now, let's check out the origins of the Orphan Killer and see all the horrible things he loves to do to his victims. I haven't reviewed something this bloody and hard to look at since my dad sent me a picture of his arsehole after a particularly brutal night at the discotheque. When will he learn? But before we get into all of that, I just want to remind you, you can see this video completely uncut and early at patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons for as little as $3 a month. That's it. Want to see the uncut videos and gain access to the Discord? Head over there now. And if you wanted to claim any of the perks still left over from the crowdfund, you can click the link in the pinned comment in the description below. Better Anything is now in post-production. We're having meetings. It's all kicking right off again, so that's very exciting, but there's still perks available, so, you know, if you want to check them out, check them out. Thank you so much to everyone who helped support that project. It means the world, honestly. Believe me when I say no one else would have, so you pretty much saved my life. Thank you. But anyway, I'm in the mood to be partially degloved, then fine in the next scene, so let's not waste any more time. Get ready to see a bunch of nuns do everything they can to create a serial killer and then act surprised when he becomes one. This is The Orphan Killer. The movie begins with this woman crawling away from a masked man dragging an axe. Cornered, she tells the killer she's hated him since birth, and he lifts his weapon as he responds.
Say hello to Mom and Dad.
Well, would you look at that? Tits covered in blood in the first scene. My girlfriend recommended this to me. Cut to this awkward title card and then to the city of somewhere in America as the same woman is being driven and a cover of Cry Little Sister plays. They then pull up at this church where the woman, Audrey, mentions she forgot her phone before kissing her cop boyfriend and off. We see the church is actually a Catholic school from this subtle sign, which Audrey enters and gets on her knees. The priest tells her to have a good show tonight and she thanks him as we cut to this skater in the halls and Audrey entering the theatre. She asks these two where her dancers are, but they don't know, saying they were here 10 minutes ago. We then cut to some girls having a smoke as they discuss the Orphan Killer.
They were orphans. His sister got adopted and he didn't. He was like so pissed. He started killing everyone.
It's just a stupid urban legend.
No, it's not. My dad thinks it's Miss Audrey's brother.
So he's an orphan that's a killer, not a killer of orphans. Well, that's a shame. Cut to Audrey entering this room and saying the word girls without moving her lips.
Girls?
She then starts to have visions of her murderous brother and this little girl skipping when we cut back to the girls.
They tortured him for years because he refused to repent. This is where it all happened. In the old part of the building.
They're discovered by Audrey, who scolds them, saying the show starts in 30 minutes and they say they left a surprise for her in her locker. Cut to the killer taking a walk down a smoky alley and grabbing his machete, then back to like 17 aerial shots of the church. We then see this fella dumping some trash and grabbing a smoke when he threatens what he thinks is a homeless person.
Bombs! How many times I tell you? Stay away from the church. Next time I catch you, I'm gonna kick your ass.
But it is not a homeless person. And look, that's your brains on the floor. Not so much of a tough guy now, are you? This is penance for not being nice to the homeless. You should have invited them in, given them a little rub and tug, maybe brushed your teeth with their San Francisco toothbrush. Do you ever think of that? Cut to the killer burning a picture of the Pope, then somehow managing to cut barbed wire with a machete. He then pops his blade on this cross and uses some of the barbed wire to lock up this door. The killer next arrives at the main church door and enters as we cut to the dancer girl's performance. Everyone applauds, with this guy being especially into it, and we cut to the girls giggling in the locker room. That's when Audrey finds her surprise, a creepy mask the girls found in the old part of the building. Audrey isn't happy about this and sends them away before getting super naked to jump in the shower. And I mean super naked. The fishnets were racy enough for a Catholic school teacher, but she's literally not wearing underwear. That is not normal behaviour, Audrey, but I support it. Anyway, she goes to the shower and the killer enters, putting on the mask the girls found. Cut to more Audrey arse in the shower, and then to a pretty savagely bad performance from this fella.
Did you like
It was
it?
real good. It was real good. It wasn't my style, but it was good. I think I'm gonna head home. Do you need a ride or anything?
He delivered those lines so fast, it's almost as if he wanted the scene to be over quicker so we could get back to Audrey in the shower. Here, Audrey is flashing back to her and her brother playing in an empty bathtub when their parents get robbed and murdered. She then starts to hallucinate being covered in blood before coming back to reality. Cut to the killer's feet as he approaches one of the dancer girls. She's startled, thinking it's the boy from earlier telling him to take off the mask. Instead, he garrots the poor girl with the barbed wire. And to be honest, I think this girl's enjoying it a little bit more than she should be. That wasn't an Oscar-winning performance by any stretch, but there was a lot of blood, so I'm happy. Cut to Audrey, now partially dressed because apparently God just hates me, and then to the killer stumbling down this hall and smashing a chair. He then kneels to pray, and we flash back to him at an orphanage. There he watches this little chunker tickle his sister and deals with that by bashing his brains in. One of the nuns then tries to drown the sin out of him, and we see his back is completely with scars from previous beatings. We then see him getting a whipping when the nuns put the mask on him, and it's like they're actively trying to make a serial killer. Finally, we see the killer all grown up when he forks this orderly and gets sedated. Back in the present, he pops this thing on the floor, then drags the body off before heading down these stairs that are literally overflowing with blood. He gets to the kitchen and finds himself a cheeky knife, and we cut to whoever the this is, presumably a teacher or something. He goes to take a dump when the bathroom lights start being weird. He fixes them, but unfortunately finds he's somehow locked himself out of the cubicle. How the f did you do that? Oh, I understand. Anyway, nameless man gets a knife in the eye, then gets his head chopped off and thrown in the toilet. Nice. R.I.P. man with no name. Cut to this bloke getting by a nun, and then to Audrey discovering the blood and makeshift barbed wire locking mechanism. She runs into the bathroom to wash the human bean juice off and has a weirdly edited hallucination before discovering Mr. Head in the toilet. She screams, disturbing the guy getting and revealing the nun to be way older than I expected. Which doesn't matter, by the way. I think I've made my feelings on older women perfectly clear by the many, many gallons of steaming hot I've dumped into your mum. It's just an interesting choice on the filmmaker's part. Unexpected, one might say. He goes out to Audrey, who's screaming and crying about what she just saw. The man stupidly thinks it's a prank and goes to check it out before returning with a brand new knife in his back. He tries to ask Audrey for help, but she's really not up for that, instead backing up as the killer exits the bathroom with the other fella's head. He bowls it down the hall at her, then squishes floor guy. And to think, he didn't even get to in that old lady's mouth. Audrey then takes off running with the killer in pursuit when she eventually ends up in the church. The priest then comes out and, thinking it's a joke, tries to push the killer around, but instead catches a blade in the tum-tum. Next, the killer finds an axe as elsewhere Audrey is trying and failing to pick this lock. She's then jump scared by this nun who just won't shut the up.
We need to leave now. Let's
Shut up, this is the only way out.
Go. We need to leave the building now. Let's go. Let's go.
Until it's too late. Well, she's with the Lord now. All 200 pieces of her. Audrey then tries to find a new place to hide, picking up this chunky bit of pipe and hitting the killer with it once, dropping it and running off again. What follows is another sequence where Audrey hides, hits the killer once with a new weapon, this time a brick, before instantly dropping it and running off again. That is literally the same scene twice in a row. What the f*** is going on? And ladies and gentlemen, if you're sitting there at home thinking, no Jonjo, in that shot she's clearly holding the brick, I'd like to direct you to the previous shot a moment earlier where she isn't. Is this a new brick she picked up between shots? If so, why drop the first brick if you're going to pick up a second one? Once again, I must ask, what the f*** is going on? The killer takes a swing at Audrey but misses, so claps her one and tries to retrieve his axe. In response, Audrey stabs him in the foot and takes off running once more. She gets to a lift but doesn't get it moving quite quick enough, allowing the killer to catch up and try choking her out. He then gets in the lift and punches her so hard it knocks her into the past. Here the other orphans look down on the killer when we find out that young Audrey is going to be adopted by this fella. Audrey then goes to the bathroom and tells her spying killer brother she won't forget him. We then flash back even further to see this guy was one of the cops at their parents' murder. To be fair to the burglar, she was clearly a zombie, so what the f*** else was he supposed to do? The nun then tells the cop about the killer's condition, that he's getting bigger and how the nuns are afraid of him. The killer then appears, but the nun sends him on his way and we cut to the cop chatting to Audrey about living with him. Audrey accepts and the killer watches them as they leave together. The children stare at each other when we cut back to present day as the killer rides the lift, his unconscious sister slung over his shoulder. Cut to her cop boyfriend returning from his shift and being unable to locate Audrey because she's with the killer who carefully lays her down on the ground. He then tries to wake her up with a precisely placed hit with a wrench but doesn't have any luck. He raises it to a height that would presumably crack Audrey's head open like a watermelon, then stops himself at the last moment, instead sticking his fingers in her mouth and getting her feet out. Because, well, he's not all bad. He's not super great though either, is he? The killer hangs Audrey by her wrists with barbed wire, which has got her hurt like a son of a but she still doesn't wake up. He then rips her top open because again, the bloke does make good decisions every now and again. The film then cuts to a morning establishing shot and we see Audrey waking up wearing a rather fetching barbed wire crown. Because of Jesus and that. The killer talks a load of old waffle about his blood running through her veins and how Jesus told him to hurt Audrey while cutting her. He then reveals the priest is still alive only to pick up this giant hacksaw and put it to good use. The killer drips the blood on Audrey as she calls him a sick and pathetic waste of life when we cut back to the cop boyfriend on the phone trying to find her. He then jumps in the car and we get more of those aerial shots from the start of the film, then cut back to the school where Audrey continues to talk shit.
I'm going to get out of this and I am going to kill you.
Oh, sorry, can you do that again? My mouth wasn't open. And call me a slut after. The killer then gets into some off-screen cutting as we stay on Audrey's pained face. The killer finally finishes and calls himself a messenger of pain, sent to remind her that her last name is Miller. He then picks up these shears while talking about the mythical being he's become in the eyes of children while she just went off and played with Barbies. He finally asks why she left him and Audrey quite rightly says because she was 5 years old. The killer goes to chop her tongue off but Audrey bites down hard on his fingers and spits the blood at him before letting out a primal scream. The killer then puts a screwdriver in Audrey's knee, which she's not a fan of. That is one crunchy knee. The killer f***s off and Audrey passes out from the pain as we cut to her cop boyfriend searching the school. He's quickly jumped by the killer and we're subjected to this weird, unnecessary and ultimately super annoying strobe effect as the two men fight. The cop guitars the killer through a window, then gets a couple of chairs broken over him before being stabbed multiple times. The killer stumbles off as the cop lays there all up, and we cut back to Audrey freeing herself by ripping her wrists to shreds. She manages to make the barbed wire longer somehow and continues to struggle as the killer walks slowly down a hall. Audrey finally gets herself free and pulls that screwdriver out when we see the priest is somehow still alive. He tells Audrey to kill him, so she does, beating the man's brains in with a hammer. She then places the barbed wire crown on what's left of his head and hobbles out of there. Cut to the killer returning to find his sister gone. He then has a hissy fit and grabs his axe to go look for her. That's when Audrey goes on the offensive and gets the drop on her big bro. Yes! Finally, Audrey! I'm surprised you didn't hit him once and drop the hammer. Elsewhere, the cop springs back to life even though he got stabbed a whole bunch of times, but then falls over again, which is pretty funny. Cut to Audrey struggling up the stairs as the killer does a Michael Myers sit-up. Audrey climbs this ladder as the cameraman tries his best to find out what she had for breakfast, then makes it to the roof, though I'm not sure why, as the killer follows behind. He then throws his axe on the roof, allowing Audrey to grab hold of it, but that doesn't matter because she does all with it. In the struggle, Audrey squeezes the killer's head to get the juices out as that Cry Little Sister cover from the opening plays again. Oh, I get it, because she's his little sister. Clever. Anyway, now we find ourselves where we started, with Audrey saying she's hated him since birth. And we finally get to see that kill shot. Mate, that dummy fall was epic. Oh, and also, there's no way that that cop got hit with 2 chairs, stabbed a whole bunch of times, and still made it up them stairs. He is literally the director, though, so I guess, you know. Cut to some time later as Audrey leaves her home. She sees a mailman and hallucinates it's her brother before being snapped back to reality. The mailman then hands her a package and she opens it when the film comes to an end. The end! Well, that was fun, right? Now I can't wait to see the sequel. What's going to happen with Audrey and her brother? How did her brother survive? Is he supernatural? Are we ever going to get to see the inside of Audrey's arsehole? Find out when I can track myself down a copy. Matt, send us a DVD, yeah? The Orphan Killer is a solid attempt at creating a brand new slasher icon with great kills and a badass final girl. Unfortunately, the film suffers from some terrible to mediocre performances and a killer who just isn't all that interesting despite his extensive origin. The story is simple enough, with a killer coming back for his sister after spending years locked up in an orphanage/asylum. Unlike Halloween, however, this movie does delve into the killer's backstory and mistreatment at the hands of the nuns, so why does he seem infinitely less interesting? Onto the characters, and we really only get 3 of any note. Audrey is surprisingly hardcore when it comes to final girls. She's constantly backchatting the killer, even when hanging from barbed wire, and for that she gets my respect. She's also played really well and probably has the best performance of the entire film. Then there's the killer who, as I said, we actually get a proper backstory for. We see his torture and moulding into the killer he is today, and there's a religious aspect that plays a huge part in that. I just don't know why I can't get on board with him. Maybe it's the look. He is literally just a dude in normal clothes except for the mask. I don't know if giving him more of a distinctive look would have helped, but I know for damn sure that giving a dude a scary mask does not make a slasher icon. Oh, and there's the cop who turns up at the end to save Audrey. Cool. Everyone else in the film is pretty terrible. Next is the gore, and the entire reason I chose to cover this movie. This thing is bloody. The garroting scene was messy, the bathroom scene was brutal, but that extended torture of Audrey really took the cake. I always say things could have been gorier, but in this instance, I think I might have been satisfied. almost. There were some issues with continuity though, like the wrist injuries and just blood in general. Minor complaint. Blood continuity is hard. Production-wise, the film looks pretty great at times. Some of the cinematography is genuinely nice, and the soundtrack isn't half bad either. I actually really like that cover of Cry Little Sister. The editing can be a bit strange though, and the thousands of aerial shots makes me wonder if the director owns a helicopter. I have to commend the production team for making a movie that looks way better than other films of this level. That being said, the film can be a bit rough around the edges when it comes to the details, but it's a great start and shows a filmmaker with massive potential for the future. In the end, The Orphan Killer is way better than it has any right to be. It's got some gnarly kills, a great final girl, and looks good, but is lacking in some of the other departments. I genuinely can't wait to see the sequel and where the story goes from here, but in the meantime, always remember to wear underwear to your teaching job. So that was my review for The Orphan Killer. What do you lot think? Despite its flaws, I had a really good time with this one, and honestly, it was one of the easiest breakdowns I've ever written for the channel. I always wanted to see what was going to happen next, and that can't be said for a lot of the shit I watch. And those deaths, good lord, that bathroom scene was unnecessarily gory, and I f***ing loved it. Speaking of which, if you want to see a guy getting head before getting his head got completely uncut and early, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. There you can find the uncut version of this video, plus others with more stuff being added all the time. We got the uncut reviews, Patreon exclusive reviews, / the comic breakdowns, and the Discord. And all that can be yours for as little as $3 a month. You can pledge more, I really appreciate it, as I need to track down my long lost sister and deliver a message of pain. Not my real sister, my made up sister. My real sister's already dead. To me at least. So that's it for another week. Like the video, leave a comment, and click subscribe if you haven't already. My name's Jonjo Lyons, and for those of you surprised that I actually haven't mentioned Audrey shitting in my mouth, I'm trying to turn over a new leaf, okay? Now, I would just simply and respectfully request that Audrey piss into my arsehole. Just glug a steaming litre of thick, chewy piss right into my stink bucket. Good night, everybody.